for Congress. Then we have Chairman of the Young Republicans National Federation, Rick Lockery. Behind me are Republican Party of Texas Executive Director John Beckmeyer. Of course, you know Senator Paul Betancourt. Our Primary Director, Marga Matthews, and our Ballot Security Chairman, Alan Vera. You know, there are a lot of buzzwords that continue to be thrown around today, like disenfranchised voters, election integrity. And yesterday we heard that Isabel Longoria has resigned, but she's resigned effective July 1st. So we're stuck with her for 2 more elections. And we heard Lena Hidalgo, Rodney Ellis, Adrian Garcia talk yesterday about it was Senate Bill 1's fault. It's the voters' fault. It's the election workers' fault. I really expected at some point that we were going to hear Lena say, hey, my dog ate the homework. You know, it's my dog's fault. The fact is, when you talk about disenfranchised voters, who was disenfranchised on Tuesday? It was a disenfranchised voter. It was a disenfranchised voter who went early in a Tuesday morning to vote, 7 o'clock in the morning, and got there, and the machines didn't work, so the poll wasn't set up. It was a disenfranchised voter who went and got the wrong size ballot, so their vote did not get recorded properly. It was a disenfranchised voter who went and got the wrong ballot, so the people they wanted to vote for were not there, they were not on their ballot. It was the disenfranchised voters of Harris County who, in fact, expect that their ballots are going to be recorded accurately, and recorded effectively and timely. But Lena Hidalgo, she wants you to believe something totally different. It's the kid's shell game, where if you're looking over here, listening to what they say, all their excuses, you'll forget that it was Lena, Adrian, Rodney, who are the ones that took away the running of elections from the duly elected people that we elected. We elected them to run our elections. She gave it to someone who had no experience, continues to have no experience. They want you to forget that they spent $13 million on this primary election and they blew it. They want you to forget that, in fact, you know, it was the voters who they cost the election. It was the voters that end up paying the price. They want you to forget, as taxpayers, that they paid Isabel Longoria $190,000 a year. So to date, they paid her over $250,000 because they hired her in 2020. They want you to forget it because if they can convince you that it's someone else's fault, not theirs, then you'll forget and they'll be allowed to sweep this under the carpet. Election integrity is about honesty, it's about transparency, it's about the voters knowing that when they go there, they're going to be able to vote on machines that work, on the correct paper size, that they're going to get the right ballot. Harris County voters, I'm talking to you. You deserve better. Don't be fooled by Lena Hidalgo, Rodney Ellis, and Adrian Garcia. You deserve better.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Stephen Mitby. I'm the attorney for the Harris County Republican Party. And we are happy to be here today to speak to you about developments in the litigation that we filed against the election administrator. I want to begin by pointing out that yesterday, Lena Hidalgo threw her hand-picked elections administrator under the bus. Lena Hidalgo is so desperate to cover up her role in this election fiasco that she actually had to ask for the resignation of the person that she appointed and forced through to be elections administrator. That's how desperate they are to engage in this cover-up. But the cover-up isn't working. And through the sunlight of the lawsuit that we filed, we are going to get to the bottom of what Lena Hidalgo did, and I'm looking forward to questioning her under oath. I know she's going to fight me every step of the way, but I'm looking forward to having the chance to ask her questions and hold her accountable for the damage that she and her unelected bureaucrats did to our election system. Let me say that Lena Hidalgo is now trying to blame Senate Bill 1 for what happened. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 1 didn't require her to send out broken voting machines. It didn't require her to print ballots on the wrong size paper. It didn't require her to send out the wrong ballots to polling stations, and it didn't require her to deliver election equipment to the wrong places. Those are failures that have to be placed squarely at the feet of Harris County government, not Senate Bill 1. But the cover-up continues, and it will continue until we get proper relief from a court. So today, we're going into court in a few minutes in an emergency hearing to ask the court to do two things: to put an independent administrator over the next election process, and to make Harris County turn the cameras back on that are supposed to be recording the vote counting. Because we know that there are 10,000 ballots that Harris County just found that apparently had been lost, and they shut the cameras off when all of this was going on. Under Texas law, Harris County is required to have a live stream and camera footage of all vote counting that's going on, and we intend to get those cameras back on because the only reason why they would have been shut off is because somebody with Lena Hidalgo's office has something to hide, and we're going to find out what they're hiding. Thank you.
John?
Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to Chairman Siegel and her team for truly doing yeoman's work in this case. She's going out with her team and protecting the voting rights of the voters of Harris County, and not enough can be said about that. We're really glad from the state party today to be able to be here to support the chairman and her team. And I'd like to read a short statement from the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. He says, Harris County Election Administrator Isabel Longoria has intentionally mismanaged a primary that affected both political parties. She does not deserve to oversee 2 more elections before her resignation becomes effective and needs to be removed from office immediately. The Harris County local elections on May 7th and the Republican runoff elections on May 24th need to have independent oversight not connected to the catastrophic primary. This can't be reiterated enough, and thank you again for being here.
Senator?
Because of inexperience, incompetence, and disingenuous behavior, we've had the worst election we've seen in 40 years in my lifetime in Harris County. The party's lawsuit is to try to establish independent oversight over an election official that's already proven incapable of doing the job. I hope the judge grants it, because there's nothing in law that will allow the Secretary of State to provide anything but advisory work with effectively a resigned elections administrator. And importantly, yes, we had rules in SB 1 to prevent this. The reason why these 10 ballots were found was because of the reconciliation language that forced the administrator here to put it down on paper that she was 10,000 ballots short. Every other county had to do it as well, but only in this county did we have problems of this magnitude. Even Tarrant County had Republican ballots with 2 pages that they managed to work through without the massive amount of complaints that we heard in this county. And when you watch Commissioner's Court yesterday, it's not just Republicans complaining, it's Democrats too. Had enough. Now here's the problem that we're left with. I don't know how to write a bill to legislate common sense and management oversight in an election office that's headed by somebody that is incompetent, inexperienced, and disingenuous. That's what we're facing now on these May elections. And the very complex. The election administrator has to oversee multiple independent school districts, cities, two constitutional amendments that happen to be my bills up for a vote on property tax relief. And then they have to turn around and do a runoff. So without independent oversight, these elections are at risk. And I've never seen an election administrator allowed after an abysmal failure, it's never happened in the country that I'm aware of, to have a failure of this magnitude, and yet that person's going to stay for another nearly 4 months. It's unacceptable. I hope the court grants independent oversight, because commissioners already rejected returning these elections to their Democrat elected colleagues. So we're faced with having to pull together, in spite of the anti-leadership of Isabel Longoria, we're going to have to pull together 2 major elections, and that's going to be quite a task. So I hope the court will grant the petitioner's request, because if not, we're going to see these mistakes repeated and again and again. And after that, I'm very worried about voter confidence in our election process at this point. That's the real key. We have an election administrator that's already been proven to be inexperienced, incompetent, and disingenuous, and yet that person's going to be in charge of 2 major elections for both political parties, the state of Texas. And that can't be tolerated.
Questions?
Independent oversight will come from the court?
Yes. Yes.
And if the court does not grant it, are there any other avenues that you all can go down to be able to get that oversight?
I would assume I'd need to pass it on to our attorney.
There are multiple grounds for relief in the court system. There are multiple levels of appellate review that we can pursue, but I have every expectation that the district judge who's hearing this will see what a problem it's been and want to get those cameras turned back on. We have to have that. We have to stop the cover-up. There is no reason why the voters of this county should tolerate a cover-up of an elections fiasco that cost them more money than any election in history and that their own county government made a mess of. And we have to have independent oversight, because the people from top to bottom, from Lena Hidalgo all the way down, have proven themselves incompetent to manage an election. They just can't do it, and they're not telling you the truth.
Adam, the reason why the cameras are there is because of SB1. Same thing why there's a reconciliation forum. Those cameras in central count were to have transparency so that somebody would find 10,000 votes after the Saturday 10:30 newscast and announce it without calling either political party chair. But they were turned off. They need to be turned back on, because the transparency that the bill requires. Multiple violations of state law here. We've got multiple election regularities and multiple violations of state law, and that's going to cost voter confidence in the system until it's fixed. There is no other avenue except the courts, because the legislature will not meet until 2023 to be able to file more legislation, which I intend to file, trust me.
And I'll add to that, it shouldn't take a court order to get Harris County to follow the law. Lena Hidalgo should be doing that on her own, but sadly, the Republican Party had to hire me to go to court and force these people to do their jobs, and that's a huge disappointment that should concern every voter.
Very quickly, I'm Alan Vera, Chairman of Ballot Security Committee. Just wanted to let you know that last night, 1 week after the election, our Central Count and Early Voting Ballot Board found 175 more Election Day ballots that had not been counted. One of the things that Mr. Mitby is doing this morning in court is asking the judge to let us count those 175 ballots that the election administrator lost in the process. Thank you.
And back to your original question, the Harris County Republican Party is going to take whatever steps we need to legally to protect the Harris County voters. Other questions?
Matt, go ahead, Matt.
Can you give some color as to why Lena Hidalgo in particular is responsible for the problems that we've seen?
Gladly. It started with the idea of moving the election process away from duly elected people, people that report, office holders report back to the public. And she brought and forced the idea on all of us that an election administrator would make the process more efficient, more effective. Well, how did that work for us last Tuesday? She forced the Election Commission, which the Republican Party former chair participated in that, and I will serve on that. He voted along with Ann Harris Bennett to not, turn around, the Democrat, to not hire Isabel because she had no qualifications. She'd never run an election. This is just the same thing we saw a few months ago. Lena was trying to give $11 million to one of her political friends with no experience. This happened with the election administrator. And now they're trying to cover it up. They're trying to say it's everyone else's responsibility, but the responsibility lies with Lena Hidalgo. They don't want you as voters to know what they've done. They want you to blame SB 1, blame the voters, blame the election workers. We, as citizens of Harris County and as voters, we deserve better. So don't be fooled by Lena Hidalgo and her gang of two, Adrian Garcia and Rodney Ellis. Don't be fooled by the lies and the con game that they're trying to pull on you. This lies with them. The buck stops at that commissioner's table, and it stops with those three. Other questions?
You mentioned you intend to file some additional legislation. Can you give us any insight into what those bills may look like?
Well, we're going to have to find first what gets measured gets fixed. And there's a lot of problems here. In fact, Chairman Siegel made a great comment at our last press conference that hardly anything went right except Republican turnout was up, in her opinion. Now, we're going to look at the cost of these elections because in 2018, it was testified to Commissioner's Court. It was $1.48 per registered voter to run elections in this county. In 2022, it was $5.48, even higher than a gallon of gas. That's a 270% increase in the cost of elections. And this is what we get for our taxpayer money. We're going to look at criminal penalties for turning off cameras. We're going to look at substantial changes if people willfully violate the law. So many stop signs that are in the election code have been violated on this, from logic checks to equipment checkout. It's preposterous. So we're going to have to review, and the thing I'm going to struggle with how to do is how to legislate common sense and experience in a person that doesn't have any. Because this election administrator had 5 months of experience before promoted to what is almost nearly the largest county in the country's elections. And so I've already turned in an interim charge to study election administrator qualifications, and that's just the first step.
Other questions?
Can you explain a little more about the cameras and I guess how you knew they were turned off or when you found
Alan?
that out?
SB 1 required that the vote counting activities and vote handling activities be live streamed continuously from the start of early voting until the canvass is completed. My wife works in Central Count, was there for 41 hours without sleeping. I've been watching those cameras since early voting began and watching the whole issue. Central Count, they finally got home Thursday morning at 3 a.m. after spending 41 hours straight. I did not watch the cameras the rest of the night, but at noon on Friday, I went to look at the cameras and they were off. And they haven't come back since. That's all 3 camera feeds have been off since Friday, and they were off when they miraculously found the 10,000 missing mail ballots. So yes, they've been off for a while, and unfortunately, that's not a criminal offense yet, but it is a violation of the election code.
And I want to clarify, Colleen Vera, she's actually the Republican Party's alternate judge down in Central Count, along with our presiding judge. Other questions? Thank you all, and
We've got an emergency hearing.
we've got a hearing. We've got, oops, yep, 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Margaret, what did you say? If anybody needs Spanish language, Margaret